the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about reverse engineering with NSA's Ghidra. And so that I can best deliver this information to you, I need to kind of know where your background's coming from, which is always a tricky situation. So I guess I'll just ask, how many people here, show of hands, have reverse engineer on their resume? Yeah? Okay. I'm prepared for a variance of different backgrounds, so I hope everyone will get something valuable out of this. Let me start off by saying there's no classified material in this brief. Nothing derivative, nothing copied. Everything here has been generated since the public release of Ghidra. I don't know about you, if you've ever gone to a hacker conference before, taken a CD home, put it on the shared server, and it has like a bunch of copied and pasted stuff from WikiLeaks. Yeah, me neither. So just a heads up there. Okay, a little bit about me. I work at Boston Cybernetics Institute, fairly new place. I'm a co-founder and technical staff there. I used to work at Lincoln Laboratory. Got my grad degree, master's at RPI, and I had the pleasure of serving the United States Marine Corps 2002 to 2006. Served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Served along some Canadians too. Although I can't remember, I was thinking about earlier this morning what the name of the base was. It was the one with like ancient ruins in it, and I swear I can't remember what it was. But wherever the Tower of Babel was. Do you remember what city that was? Anyways, I served with some Canadians there. But. Okay, so BCI, where I work, we're a public benefit corporation founded November 2nd, 2017. We're located next to Harvard University, and we do trainings on reversing exploitation, specialized embedded systems, since that's where big demand is. And funny enough, November 2nd is actually the anniversary of the Morris worm from like 1987 or 89 or something like that. So is it a coincidence that we founded our company the same day? I don't know, but you can't prove anything, so just leave it at that. Okay, so this is the outline for today. We're going to talk about, I'm going to give you a little background, what Ghidra is, just like a few slides on reverse engineering, and then most of the time, I'm going to spend demonstrating things in Ghidra, so you get to see it live. And I guess I'm the speaker, right? So they can ask questions. It's my format, right? Okay, so yeah, I mean, if you got a question or something, you can just, pop one up when, if I didn't explain something clearly enough. Okay, so what's Ghidra? Well, to quote the NSA, pronounced NISA, by the way, that's from their PR department told me that. So it's a software reverse engineering suite of tools. It's free and open source. It's written in Java, which is great because that means it runs on anything. It's available on GitHub now, or you can go to nsa.gov. And I will make all these slides available on GitHub. And I have a track record of doing that. So if you just, because I know everyone's heard that before, and then the slides never make it up. I will make sure they make it up. Okay. So Ghidra was released publicly March 5th, 2019 at the RSA conference. That's just earlier this year, about 6 months ago. Title, come get your free NSA reverse engineering tool. So kudos to the PR department that came up with that. That's pretty cool. And it was, the speaker there was Rob Joyce. Okay, so, and this is just some of the version releases, just to let you know like how fast it's being updated. The dates don't match really up to anything though. Like the first release here, it says February 28th, but it wasn't released until March 5th, like publicly. So I don't know, maybe it was like an internal commit or something. But they're pretty active as far as addressing Git like issues and fixing things. There's all sorts of like interesting problems when it first came out, which they've done a pretty good job of addressing. And as far as a history, and I got to give credit here to Alexei Bolazel. So he and I did some work together. So if you do a grep for like strings formatted in like date parameters through the Java code of Ghidra, a lot of interesting dates pop out, a lot of them in the late 90s. So it seems to suggest that the tool has been developed for 20 years or so, although what is much more strongly suggestive of the long development period is the quality and the huge body of work, which we'll dive into. But that's just a fun thing. So run grep over it and see what pops out. Okay, If Ghidra really means nothing to you, if you've never seen it before, never heard of it, it's related to these tools. So if you've heard of like IDA, Binary Ninja, Radare, or R2. So IDA and Binary Ninja have free and commercial versions. R2 is just free. With contrasting that to Ghidra, Ghidra is just free, completely free, open source. You can do whatever you want with it. Maybe somebody will do us all a favor, make the commercial version, have some commercial support. That'd be nice. But we haven't seen that yet. So here's some of the related tools. You want to see a detailed comparison, I'd recommend the website from Radare, which is just the bottom right-hand corner there. If you just go to Google Radare, it's like their homepage. They have a detailed comparison, which they label, quote, the unfair comparison between R2, IDA Pro, and Hopper. They have not updated it. It does include Ghidra. If you look on the far right side, they have it's like page after page after page of detailed comparisons, although unfair, so just take that. They say it's unfair. So. But it's just, if you want all the detailed information, this is the place to go get it. I hope today that I can maybe lower the barrier of intimidation of picking up the tool yourself. Maybe you can pick up a few gems here and there, things you haven't seen about the tool yet. And then I'm going to be around you the rest of the day and tomorrow if anyone wants to deep dive into Ghidra, talk about some real technical questions. OK. Now, this is for the few people who have never done reverse engineering before. It's like 3 or 4 slides, so just bear with me to explain what reverse engineering is. So forward engineering, if you think about this as like spectrum of program abstraction, on the left side, you have abstract. So this is like your requirements document. This is like the summary. This is the human language written. And the far other side, the concrete side, is the binary. This is the thing you ship out. And the process to go between those, maybe you have a human that takes the requirements, makes pseudocode or UML diagrams or what have you. From there, pseudocode, you may have a tool assist or another just human-generated process to do C source code. And then finally, you do a compiler, assembler, all the way down to a binary. Well, reverse engineering is the other way around. And funny thing is, I've only heard reverse engineers call this forward engineering. Or everyone else just calls it like software development. But when you're a reverse engineer, you find it's a helpful qualifier to know. So reverse engineering is the other way. So this is kind of like a you are here situation. It's like you're just given a binary, and somebody asks you a question, but that question came from the far other end of the spectrum. So they're like, what does this program do? And you're like, well, OK, how big is my team? How long do I have? What do you need it to do? These are like one of several questions you could ask. What does this program do? You could ask other questions too, little spicier questions like, who made this program? Or did we make this program? And now other people are using it? Like, that's a question some people have to ask themselves sometimes too, right, if you read the news. Or maybe you'll say, like, what are the hidden capabilities in this program that were unintended and now we'd like to use to our advantage? There's a lot of questions you can ask. So reverse engineers start over here. This is like the forward engineering. Reverse engineers just go the other way. So you start there with the binary. Then you have like a disassembler. Then you go from assembly to C source code or something approximating it using a decompiler. And then as of right now, we still have to use a human to take it from the decompiled code all the way up to that executive summary that's going to land on someone's desk and people are going to make big decisions based on. So today's talk, Ghidra, is about those 2 big red arrows on the right. So Ghidra is a disassembler and decompiler and a whole lot more that goes with it, but that's primarily what it does. So it's just a little bit of context about what reverse engineering is and what Ghidra can do for you. All right. Now we get to go see some Ghidra stuff. So. All right. So I got Ghidra. It's on the desktop here. Double click it. Ghidra's opening. All right, that's visible. OK. So we've opened Ghidra. We have no active project. It takes a few steps to just like actually get to the fun part. But the first step here is we've got to open this up. Now that we have this, we're going to start a new project. And we'll call this, let's see. This countermeasure 2019-1. OK, we got a project. but we have no binaries or anything in the project, so we need to import something. So I'll just do I for import. And let's see. I have a bunch of exercises, publicly available exercises here. So let's see. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import this binary. Ghidra is going to do a little bit of parsing for it. Let's see, can I? All right, there we go. Yeah, ooh, okay, there we go. First thing I do is I change all the fonts on all my computers now. I don't have to wear glasses, or maybe I do, but I just refuse. I don't know. It's one of the two. So Ghidra identifies it with this basic parsing information. Looks at the magic numbers, the headers, things like that. Okay, it's an ELF file. It's written in ARM. So we'll say OK. And now it's going to give us just a little bit more of the metadata of what's going on with this binary. Good for record keeping. Okay. Yay, now we've imported our binary. Now it's actually, we're so close to the fun stuff. So I'm going to double click this now. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up one of the tools. So there's a tool chest here. Ghidra is modules and extensions and scripts and tools, and everything is composable. But the main tool right here is going to be the code browser. So I'm going to double click this. Dragon coming at you. Be careful. Okay. So now it's going to say has not been analyzed. Yes, let's analyze it now. And here you'll find here's a lot of default analyses that will be done, and these are all configurable. You can write your own. You might already have internal processes right now to automate this process. So we're just going to go with the defaults. We'll hit analyze. Okay. Not quite any of the pizzazz or hype just yet, but at least we're finally in the tool with the code and all these intriguing icons up here that does who knows what. So we'll figure it out. Okay. So if I wanted to reverse engineer this binary, I guess the first thing I'd do is I'd probably run the binary. So there it is. It just asked me for a password. This is like a introductory training exercise we do. So it just simulates, it's a program, just asks you for your password, so you got to figure it out. So what we'll do is we'll look for all of the ASCII strings in the binary. So up here under window, see it says defined strings, like that. And now we have this string window pop up over here. And let's see, we'll scroll down a little bit. And I see enter password, you got it, Gmon start. I don't know what this is, so we'll see. Okay, so if we want to figure out what this program is doing, I will start off with enter password, since that's an indicator I got by running the program that at least is being accessed and used in some capacity. So what I'll do is I'll click on this, and over here on this window, this big window, this is like it's called the listing window, but it's kind of like the main window. It's the one that contains the code. It's the one that you'll most often be spending time in. And what you see that it's done, by clicking on the string, it's jumped me over here to where that string is stored in memory. Okay. So I don't really care so much about where it's stored. It's probably stored in the data section, read-only data, whatever. I care about where it's being used. So my next step here is I'm going to say, okay, well, where is it being used? So I'm going to click on the symbol, go to references here, and then down here it says show references to. Control-Shift-F. And for those of you who ever use IDA Pro, it's like hitting X for cross-references. And also for those of you who use IDA Pro, all of the hotkeys are detrimental to my psyche. They're all going the wrong way. They're the wrong buttons. It's instead of C for code in IDA, it's C is clear in Ghidra. And it's that's not what I want. I want to code. So anyways, what I'm saying is I have a list of key bindings for Ghidra that are directly taken from IDA. So for those of you who use IDA often and you don't want to learn a second set of key bindings, I've already kind of started on that problem for you. Okay, tangent over. So I found this string. Now I want to do a cross-reference of where the string is being used, which I've done here. I click on this. It takes me to the part of the code in which the string is being used. Okay, and now this is sort of let's get to the pizzazz, the moment where why is Ghidra so hyped up, which is all this code here can be cryptic if you have never studied ARM code before, and you may have trouble reading this. So the big thing about Ghidra is the decompiler. So what I'm going to do is up here, display decompiler. And now on the right side, come on, we can do it. Let's do it together. Trackpad. Okay. Well, over here, that's like the moneymaker of Ghidra. So taking a program back to source code, it's done so pretty easily, and it can do this for many different architectures. And for the architectures it cannot do it for, it makes it pretty easy for people to write their own processors so that Ghidra can then disassemble it and then lift it to the pseudocode or the C compiler. So that's sort of like the big part of Ghidra, and then what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the details, how you might use this, and I guess where you might go from here. But I guess first we got to figure out what is that password? So let's clean this code up a little bit because Ghidra doesn't finish everything for you. Let's see here. In the code, it says stack check guard to local C. Local C, I usually change the variable names of any variable name that I would say, like, would you yell at your colleague for naming their variable this? If you would, then you need to change it. That's kind of what I tell students. So, okay, so let's rename this, and I'll rename this to canary. And then let's see, we got a string compare. Let's see, printf, enter password, scanf, %s, AC stack 32. I don't think any of my colleagues would name something that. So let's rename that one. We'll go user input, okay? And now we see string compare to the static string, gotta start somewhere. Okay, so let me copy this. Oh, no, it copied the quotes too. I don't want the quotes. Okay. All right, let's copy this. Over here, and now run the program. I'll do Control-Shift-V. You got it, yay, right? So, except, the idea here is just a simulation, but you could imagine it is a serial number, or it's I don't know. You could use your imagination, whatever you want it for, right? Okay. So that's sort of taking you through the basics of opening a project, importing a binary, let's walk through it, let's find strings, let's cross-reference it, things like that. But that's just the beginning. But this is sort of like the big hype. You got it. This is it. And it's pretty easy to install. There's lots of fun exercises online if you want to get started. This is just me speaking as a teacher. A lot of times reverse engineering can be very intimidating to people, but anybody who likes to solve puzzles would love reversing. And sometimes people love reversing so much they get obsessed about it. Like I'm sure a lot of people do here with their cybersecurity, their individual disciplines. People get so obsessed about it that during our class time, I've had to start innovating ways to break people's concentration. So like during breaks, I'll brighten the lights, and then I'll turn on increasingly obnoxious music until I get to like my favorite punk music. And then people are like, okay, I don't want to stare at a screen to this. I'm going to get up and go walk around, just so I can get their brain to relax and then come back stronger. But I just want to put it out there. If you've never done it before, now is a great time as ever. Okay. So this was, let's see, this is basic program. Let's close this one. So now what I'm going to do is maybe we can go to like a little more complex scenario here. And we can take a look at bulk importing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a new project. Let's call this bulk import. And now I'm going to go to File, batch import, batch bulk. You get the idea. So go to my class directory. Let's go to exercises, RE, ARM, and then, yeah, let's go. So now, actually, I'll right-click here, expand all. There we go. So this has a big benefit because when you are doing reverse engineering in more real-world scenarios, not so much ones like the fun little thing we did here, but there's a lot of cross-referencing of files, like shared libraries, things like that. And now, with this tool, you can, within the Ghidra code browser, you can reference other files outside the one you're currently browsing. So what I mean by that is, if your binary references another DLL, you can just naturally follow a link from the current binary into the other DLL, and it'll just disassemble and decompile it. So the same way forward engineers think about programs with the whole project management suite, this shows a great level of maturity for reverse engineering that I don't see in a lot of other tools. So just kind of handy to have a bulk import. OK. One thing I have to tell you, and let me just open up. This is ARM3, do basic analysis. It's like another thing. It's asking for your, it's asking for a password and you got to figure it out. So one of the things I want to show you here is just kind of like give you a little bit more of a tour. Now that we've sort of raced from the beginning to the end, you got to see the decompiled. So just give you a little tour of what you're looking at here. So upper left-hand corner, you got program tree. So these are like all the different sections of the binary. You can explore based on those. Down here, you have the symbol tree. So you're going to expect imports, exports, functions, if you want to go by function. And then down here, which is, I think, one of the best parts of Ghidra, which is its data type manager. So it handles data types like you would expect, like integer, float, things like that. But it also has like these meta data types, like string. String is, I mean, if you think in terms of like C, there's not really like a string. There's like an array of characters. But using C++ and other libraries, extension libraries, you start to get these more extendable methods. Well, Ghidra now has that with its meta types. And of course, like most reversing tools, you can define your own type. So my colleague, Evan Jensen, he's got this great demo, which I don't have it here, about making a PNG type. And Ghidra will actually, you can parse a PNG out of a binary, and Ghidra will just display it to you in line. It's kind of like if you're in MATLAB or something, or you use Jupyter notebooks, you just like see the graphs in line. Ghidra will display, it'll display an int, it'll display a float, it'll display a PNG, like right in line. So it's kind of nice. So you got program trees, symbol tree, and then down here you got console. So this is like for scripting. So what we've covered up until now has been mostly just manual. Well, I guess it's all manual. So this is like you're clicking icons, you're relying on the intuition of a human to go back and forth. And that's great, except when your binary has like 10,000 lines, it's like 10 megabytes, or say you have 100 binaries because you're loading in the file system from a firmware, right? OK, so you got to start going automation. This is where Ghidra shines too, not just in its disassembler decompiler, but also in its automation. So up here, you got a green arrow, display script manager. Let's check that out. And this comes bundled with 240 scripts. And it covers all sorts of different architectures in both Java and Python. So you may recall in the beginning when I said there were other things that would suggest the maturity or length of development. If you go through these scripts and you see how mature a lot of these are, it would suggest many person years of time in development here. But let's take a look. So we will grab the simplest one possible of these scripts. And let's take a look at, I think, let's see, examples. Examples, let's go to Python, and then let's see, Ghidra basics. There we go. It's about the basic you can go. Now up here at the top, for the scripting manager, you have this scripting manager, which is a punishment, if you ask me, to try to work in times in that, right? Like no syntax highlighting, no nothing, whatever. But there's also this here. So Ghidra has a very mature Eclipse integration, so that you can launch Eclipse from Ghidra, and you can edit You can do projects. Everything that you use Eclipse for in your normal Java or Python program development is now what you can do for your Ghidra scripts. So now it's kind of taking it out of the realm of like interactive reversing, and now you're treating the program more like it's a mathematical object to be observed, manipulated, measured, patched, things like that. That's kind of how I imagine when you transition from like the intuitive back and forth manual analysis into something that's more automated. So let's see, Ghidra basics here. So this is going to do things like, let's see, ask string. This is added comment, things like this. So what I'll do is I'll go back to Ghidra here, back to the code browser. Here we go. And I'll run this. That's just with this play button up here. And we'll see what this does. So this is like the hourglass for Ghidra. Please enter a value. Let's say 42. 42, yay. OK, enter a dialog. My dial. OK, how about that one? Unrecognized dial. OK, let's pick. Built-in types. Let's go with char. There we go. OK, and then you'll see in the scripting here, it took in our input. This looks like it's a dump of strings. You've chosen a data type or whatever, and so you just see the output there. And it supports both Java and Python. Now, because Ghidra is written in Java, you'll find that for the biggest changes you'd like made within Ghidra, you'll want to use Java. So Python is good for like automating routine tasks, but if you want to like extend Ghidra, then I'd recommend using Java. And let me show you kind of like some backup of why I think that. If we go to right here, reference libraries, this is really Ghidra, instead of thinking of it as like a one core tool, it's really a loose framework of plugins or extensions. And so the disassembler is a plugin, the decompiler is a plugin, the browser is a plugin, the grapher, everything you could think of is really just another Java plugin, which makes it really nice so you can easily extend it to do all sorts of things that, just different things you might want to do. So like, decompiler, things like that. So this credit here goes to Evan again, because I think this is brilliant. So he was browsing through here, and let's see, where were we looking at? We were looking at file formats here, and then down here, let's see, we see a iOS Apple 8900. I don't know if you remember that one. I think that was the processor from like the first iPhone. So I don't know if this has been presented anywhere yet. So please let me know if anyone has seen this before, but I don't think it's been presented anywhere. But if we go down here, we see, OK, this is Apple 8900. We have a decryptor class. It's like, well, what are you decrypting exactly? NSA or NISA? What are you decrypting? So let's take a look. So over here, scrolling through here, we'll see iOS AES crypto, 8900 constants, key bytes. It's like, OK, what are these, I guess? Can we open declaration? Whoops. Sorry, I'm zoomed in here. This is kind of. There we go. OK. So I think NSA included in its release of Ghidra in the AES key from Apple to decrypt its 8900 firmware images, I guess, which is like weird. I mean, it's not a big deal in terms of like confidentiality or anything, because that key has been leaked for like a long time. It's just funny that the US government has private companies' private keys in a tool that it released. So But I really wish I could take credit for that one. I just can't. Or the liability, really more important. So that's my colleague, Evan Jensen. That's his name. So he found that one. OK. So that's scripting. Let's see. That's modules. That's Apple's AES key, I guess. Let's see. OK. OK, so we did bulk import. Let's see. OK. I got to tell you about the help system. So I talked about the maturity of this tool. Some reversing tools they don't even have like any information about how they work, but rather like people have to keep figuring it out over and over again. Like there's like the documentation, like the tool's evolving so quickly, the documentation doesn't keep up. But with this tool, I found a strong contrast to that in that the documentation is thorough, it's very helpful, and it's available through F1. So let me give you an example here. So up here at Program Tree, I said, here's all the different segments. And if I right-click here, it's going to offer me this, modularize by, I'll zoom in here. So I can modularize by, and let's do complexity depth or dominance. You know, like I don't know what these things are, right? But let's see. So modularize by dominance, and here we go. So it's basically laid out all of these different things, like in some order in which I might inspect the binary. Now I show you that because I want to show you, like at any given time, if I don't know what dominance is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F1. And what this has done is Ghidra has a context-sensitive help menu system. You can be 7 layers deep in a context menu, or you can be in a certain window, and you hit F1, and it doesn't bring up, like, go see here. It brings up, like, a thorough article, something that's very helpful. It's so helpful that when students ask me, how does this work, how does this work, I said, have you tried F1 yet? Like, it's kind of like the newer version of RTFM, right? More polite, but like honestly, it's going to have a better answer than I will have on hand anyway, so read that first, then let's talk about it. So I found this to just be hugely helpful as a teacher, especially just as a person learning it on my own, since it's public release. So the help system is just like, if you got to take something away, it's F1. F1 will take you pretty far on this one. OK. All right, let me pause here from all these different demos because I think I kind of hit like a lot of the big stuff here, and I'll leave a lot of room for questions. And so let's see here. I wanted to answer some management questions about this because a lot of the hype around Ghidra has been like, you know, here's the latest firmware. I didn't show you the firmware. I'll have to show you the firmware. So we'll import some firmware here. But I wanted to make sure I cover this too, which is I get a lot of questions from managers, and these are the big ones. If you got some more, then I want to hear some more. But the first one I'm thinking is, you know, should my team be using this? Well, if you accept the definition that I gave in the beginning of the talk about what reversing is, going from a binary to answering questions, it is likely that your team could find Ghidra useful. Now, this one kind of comes hand in hand, which is, will attackers use this against me? And it's like, well, if the NSA doesn't like you, then they've been doing it against you for like 20 years. But yeah, attackers are going to be using this. So you kind of avoid it at your own peril. It's like, it's 20 years old, but how many millions of dollars of funding have gone into this, I can only speculate. And how many person years have gone into this? I mean, this is a huge body of work that no one can afford to ignore. You have to spend some time with it, see how it benefits you. It may not, but if your job is to reverse engineer, it likely will. Now, here's another one I've been getting. If it's free, will this save me money if I switch? A lot of people, I feel that compulsion, especially as people are making their the budget for the fiscal year, of saying, I'm going to dump all my IDA licenses, and I'm going to go go right to Ghidra. We're just going to use Ghidra from now on, which that's a good, healthy instinct as a manager to always optimize to see you can go forward. Here's an issue, though. I haven't mentioned anything about debugger yet. There's no debugger. There's no dynamic analysis in Ghidra publicly available yet. I have 3 points of information for you. One, I have a slide from Rob Joyce, which is publicly available online. On the right side, he has a cool graphic or whatever, right? It says like, yeah, debugger, coming soon, I guess. The second one is there is a quote from him from the register, which basically just quotes his slide. And then thirdly, during Recon earlier this year, can I get a show of hands? Who was at Recon? Yeah? A few of you were there? OK. Recon's great. I had a good conference. It's in Montreal. An audience member asked me, said, excuse me, NSA, when will the debugger be released? And they said, they went around a little bit, but they finally landed on probably near the end of summer. So maybe I should have clarified which year they were talking about. I think they implied this summer, but that's on me. That's on me. So there's no debugger yet. And then after I have this discussion with the managers, the next thing is up is like, well, what about that debugger plugin I saw on, there's a debugger plugin on GitHub. Can't they just use that? And it's like, well, they can. It's called GDB Ghidra. It's not meant to be a full debugger. It sort of like takes the state information found by GDB and displays it in Ghidra, which is useful. But it's not a replacement for debugger. It's not a replacement for all of the mature tooling around other debuggers like GDB and IDA Pro's integration GDB. So if I were to try to answer that question, will this save money if I switch? OK. If you are dealing with reverse engineering things that you'd never use dynamic analysis with, then it may save you money. IDA has its own ecosystem of automation and scripts and plugins and things like that. So it may save you money. If you do use dynamic analysis, if the things you reverse engineer are within a mature enough ecosystem in which debuggers exist, Ghidra is not a replacement. Don't let the free kind of entice you past it and just say, oh, I'm going to train up my team on the I mean, I train people in Ghidra. I love Ghidra. It's great. I just don't want anybody to just jump the gun on that and just go right to Ghidra because that's going to cause some problems. I mean, especially if your reverse engineers cost as much as my reverse engineers do, then wasting their time by making them do something statically when they should be doing it dynamically, that will not save you time. That will not save you money. It'll save you money on some column, and it'll just waste a whole lot of money in another column. And the net effect will be whatever you choose to spin it as. But I would say, it most likely will not save you money. OK. So let me show you I want to just show you the firmware thing, and then I think I'll do a summary, and we'll do some questions. OK? OK, let me close the code browser. I'm closing that. Closing the help system. Exiting Eclipse. Thank you. OK. Let's go back to Ghidra here. OK. So this is the firmware from a Linksys E2500 router. And I have extracted the firmware using binwalk. And then I have imported the entire file system into Ghidra. So any file that references any other file, I can easily navigate through that system, start marking things up, put comments in, put tags for my colleagues about what they should be looking at. I mean, there's about 100 features in Ghidra that I just don't have time to go into. There's a lot of collaboration utilities built in, too. OK, so we're in here, and we'll go down to, let's see, user, sbin, and there we go, HTTPD. So while this is loading, I'll just mention that the collaboration utility that I reference is that in the beginning, when I say start a new project, it'll say non-shared or shared project. So Ghidra has like a built-in git commit-like system in which I can check out a project, make some changes, annotate some things, and check it back in, and then you can see the differences. So that's another thing that points to that maturity, because if you are an institution like the NSA, maybe you do have 20 people for one project. That's very unusual to see a private organization have 20 people on a reverse engineering project, because their reverse engineers are pretty hard to find. We're trying to make more of them, but they're hard to find. So that collaboration utility is very useful. Okay, so through here, I'll go for strings, and it's a old firmware. So we'll look at CGI, which I can't remember what CGI stands for anymore. Common Gate Interface. Thanks. So, and then we'll go look at these and go to the cross-reference this. That's not what I want. See if this decompiles in any. Oh, you know what? I didn't do an analysis when I started, but okay. Well, what I really wanted to show you was that you can bulk and import an entire firmware system and then just start working on it together like that. Okay. So, what are some of the things you want to take away with this talk that I've talked about so far? And I look forward to questions, during this time and afterwards. Let's talk about. Okay, it's free and open source. That's important, especially in an educational environment where nobody has any money. It's a good disassembler, it's a good decompiler. It's extendable and scriptable through Java and Python. And the debugger, don't wait on it. Just don't wait on it. I mean, I have heard rumblings and rumors throughout the community for a very long time about how this tool, some tool from the NSA, was coming out sometime. And just based on that anecdotal data point from my own life, I don't know when this debugger. I think somebody will write the debugger and publish it on GitHub faster than they'll release it. And I would love for the NSA to prove me wrong. NSA. Okay. Generally not a replacement, and avoid learning it, at your own peril. Okay. So if you're interested in Ghidra, we do trainings in Ghidra. So we were at Ring 0 in Vegas. We did a Ghidra training there. We were just out in Abu Dhabi. We did Hack in the Box. We're going to be at 44Con in London, first week of December. We're doing some Ghidra training there. And then we're doing Ghidra training out in Infiltrate in Miami. There's my contact info. It's the company website. So Twitter handles if you want to ask any questions. And one last thing I guess I'll mention for the managers, or even the reverse engineers. So much time, the valuable time of your reverse engineers or exploit devs or your security analysts or whatever, is spent configuring your tools and your environments and getting QEMU to run this one weird architecture so that you can fuzz it. You just need one weird answer. So because we've been training people in Ghidra, IDA, reversing exploitation for so long, we've had to come up with an efficient way to manage all that. So what we've done is we've sort of come up with something we're calling the BCI Terminal, and we can't think of a better name, so it's kind of just stuck with it. It's kind of like Bloomberg Terminal for finance, but this is sort of for exploit dev. So it's collaboration ready, so you can just pop open the Pelican case, put 8 people on it, synchronize in real time or through a commit interface. So if you want to hear more about that stuff, we can take time offline to talk about how that can help your team be more efficient and not spend so much time, figuring out QEMU, because that is a time-consuming time. Okay. So at this point, why don't I open up for questions about Ghidra?
So I assume that you've used Binary Ninja, you've used IDA Pro, you've used possibly Radar 2. How would you compare Ghidra to those 3 different products as far as functionality, ease of use, and what it can provide?
Well, what comes to mind immediately is documentation. So Binary Ninja is just evolving so quickly. I think it's terrific what it's doing for the community. I think the best documentation for Binary Ninja is its own code, I guess, as opposed to a mature documentation system. As a reverse engineer, I don't have favorites. I can't afford to have favorites because I have to be as effective and efficient as possible. So we make sure that we have all tools at all times, depending on what it calls for. So sometimes it's just like programming languages, kind of a good way to think about it. So if you need to like solve this problem, maybe Go is best, or maybe assembly is best, or this. So I think Ghidra is definitely a contender. I don't think I wouldn't write off the other tools. To me, it's just one more tool in my toolbox. If you have a more specific question about how they compare, I could try answering that too. But did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Don't yell at me.
What does the developer community around Ghidra look like right now? It's a Java-based tool, which is not typically used for most reverse engineering tasks, so it seems like it's very specialized, but is 90% of the development still being done by NSA, or have other folks started to dip into it?
I certainly cannot speak to the percentage of development being done by NSA. I can speak to the community outside of NSA, which it seems to be a vibrant, enthusiastic community of a small group of people. What I have seen as far as like blog posts, Git commits, things like that. I think there's like a little bit of teasing about like, oh, Java, it's not the new hip language, but ultimately reverse engineers don't care. What do they study assembly because it's hip? It's not, right? It's because that's what you need to know to get where you want to go. So I think a great place to start is GitHub, and I got some slides here. Here we go. So interoperability plugins. So people are developing already, like right away, how to interface with GDB, how to interface with R2. I mean, people are enthusiastic about this, although I think the community to expand even further could use some like free workshops to talk about Ghidra development. Right now, it's still at the conferences where the prices can be prohibitive for a lot of people. So I think getting some classes, especially in academia, since Ghidra is free and open source, I think you could really spur a large growth for students that want to develop in Java or Python, either one of them. So doesn't answer your question because I don't know about the percentages, but I can say it's active and people are enthusiastic. Just Google Ghidra and everybody's got a new plugin out every week. Okay.
Yeah, great. Just wanted to get a barometer on it. That sounds good.
Sure.
Can you touch a little bit more on the collaboration part of Ghidra, how it works, if people can work simultaneously or it's only serially?
That's a good question. So it's definitely not serially. It is a push, commit, pull situation. It's not a real time. It's not like Google Docs. There is a plugin for IDA called iDarling, which we've been working with that actually does things in real time. Ghidra does not do things in real time. You can do things simultaneously or in parallel. You can check out the project. You can work on separate functions. I didn't mention, it is a client-server relationship. So you set up a Ghidra server, and then people connect to it. And then you can check out the project. Once you connect, you'll see all the different projects that are listed. So you can organize like your working group out of that, and keeps track of checkout times, pushes, pulls, diffs, things like that. It is the mark of a mature reversing environment to start doing that, as opposed to like walking down the hall and looking over someone's shoulder, especially if you have like really big projects and you have a team of 10, 15 people. That's a problem that I just haven't heard many managers in the private sphere really complain about, because they don't have 15 reverse engineers on one project. So I just can only speculate that that is a problem NSA had a long time ago, and they had to solve it. So client-server relationship, work in parallel, push and pull, commit, timestamps, but not real time. Okay.
Have you ever tried using the Eclipse debugger with anything that you've pushed out of Ghidra?
I have not. I think that Eclipse debugger does work in debugging scripts. I don't know of any. I think the full suite of capabilities within Eclipse works if you are operating directly on Ghidra or you're operating on Ghidra scripts. but that's not really where I've spent a lot of my time with Ghidra. So that's the best I got for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can always more questions or whatever. I work. One of my colleagues, Evan Jensen, so we usually teach everything together, and so we'll be focusing on different areas. So if I can answer it, chances are he can. So just give us a shout, and we'll see what we can do for you if you have any more questions.